going to going to the your
Town
elected
hall and
officials
stuff, right?
and trying to do it. You could become one of those few people out there who's always trying to do stuff. But you'd have to gain some sort of momentum. But the only way I ever actually see it practically happening, it's just going to have to reach a point where it's so bad that there's an upheaval, that the public revolts against the government.
Yeah.
And people but we're always able to look at other places where it's still, even as bad as it is, there's other places that worse. And I think as long as people are able to do that and say it's worse, they're going to be like, well, we're better. It's better here than it is there. And then that's all they need to sit there and not do anything again.
See, I think it's coming though, dude. I think you can look really, really around and see Greece and see, all the uprisings in the Middle East and whatnot where they think their governments are screwing them, and truthfully are getting screwed, for various reasons, whether it's dictatorships or, Greece is a great example because it's just a straight up economic collapse. It's failure of the government to take care of the money. Isn't the UK is another one, isn't it? That's having financial problems and is all of a sudden seeing people in their streets and whatnot. It's coming, dude. People are not going to take it forever. They're not going to take it forever. And it's going to get bad before it gets good. I agree with you. It's got to get bad before it ever gets good. There's a certain element out there, the Alex Jones crowd, that believes that you could talk your way into convincing people to do right. But I don't know that I believe that that's going to be the way things get fixed. I honestly think it's going to be old school. Pitchforks and guns is going to solve the problems.
And to be honest with you, that may be just the natural cycle of how it goes. That things reach a certain point. There's an upheaval. There's a huge change. There's an overthrowing of the rich and the powerful. This has happened in the past. You could read history or watch movies where the monarchy is taken down and I guess in a way it's almost kind of like it's not a monarchy, but the way that our government is now, it's certainly a select few that are on top benefiting like a monarchy, but we're saying it's not because we're supposedly democratic. We're this democracy where even do you remember when Bush was in there and then basically they said they're going to allow them to listening in on phone calls and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm, sure.
I always said this is wrong.
Yeah.
This is just them taking away another right, and everyone's like, oh no, I don't mind if they listen to phone calls because they don't listen to. I'm like, really? Do you really think that if they actually thought somebody was a terrorist, if they actually had reason to believe this person is there to do harm, legal or not, you don't think that our spies and our our intelligence is listening to what they're saying?
Of course they are.
And regardless of whether it would actually hold up in a court system, which it doesn't matter if they're in some illegal terrorists, but I'm like, whether it would hold up as, what you could do with a citizen in court and whether it's admissible, they're listening to it. Mm-hmm. And I said, most likely what's always probably happened, I think, and I've never heard anyone dispute that they think this happens, is they find out, some bad guy, we'll just call him a bad guy or an evildoer,
right?
Has a plan. They catch on to it. Somehow they get a lead. They listen in. They find out where they're going to be. They show up to do their plan, and they're some Secret Service, some CIA spies, whatever, whoever,
right.
Some intelligence there. Snipes them out, takes them out. You read about some shooting in some place. You never know exactly what it was. But, at that level, the guy who was there to do the terrorist act, he got taken out.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody actually think that has not occurred in the past, does not consistently occur? So why do you need to pass a law?
Yeah, you didn't.
Saying that but what was the true purpose of it?
Dude, of course, dude. It's about controlling the American people, dude. There's
right.
all kinds of conspiracy out there, and I don't know if it's conspiracy or not, but I'll call it conspiracy, where people are saying that everything right now is being done just to condition the people toward, obeying. And I honestly believe there's a lot of that in there. The TSA is a prime example, dude. I get it. A couple of planes hit some buildings in New York and Washington and PA, and I get that was horrible. Lord knows I was ready to go out and just take people out when that happened, as I'm sure you were, as I'm sure any American citizen was at the time. But you know what, dude? There's no reason in the world that it has to be to the level that it is right now. There's just not. And I mean,
and the funny part is they're still inefficient. Every time they get tested, where they purposely try to sneak, they sneak as much through as they ever did.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a useless thing that we spend billions of dollars being spent of American people's money, and for what? And every time it gets into a high uprising, people start getting pissed off about it. And, every time anything like that happens, well, all of a sudden, now we got a guy that buried this in his underwear and in his shoes. And, it's convenient. I'm not necessarily saying that it's the government doing it, but I'm going to say it's awfully convenient how every time the American people get crazy about it, there's yet another, well, we need it because this guy snuck it in his underwear, or now there's talk that they're going to put in bombs in their implants. And it's like, what? Stop it.
Here's what I saw when Bush had that law passed. I saw a stripping of American rights.
Absolutely.
And so many people don't see it, and they're like, no, that was for our protection, this and that. I go, that's how they're going to tell. That's what they're going to tell you. Like, you're never going to wake up one day and they're going to say, okay, American citizens, these are the rights you no longer have. Mm-hmm. It's always going to be disguised as, we have to do this. This is for your good. Yeah. It's always going to be presented that way. But when you really look at it, and I'll go on the record right now with this. I've done it before in conversations, but, first time it's actually probably been recorded.
Right.
There will come a day where, so now you're able to listen to people's phone calls and basically use that, and they're allowed to do that. There will come a day in the future where an American citizen is going to do something that most people think is some sort of heinous act.
Right.
And they're not going to have the evidence they need without that phone call that they heard. That somebody listened on that phone call, and at some point, because they're going to want to get that one person so badly, the court is going to allow that phone call to become admissible.
Oh, sure.
And the second that happens, guess what? You just set precedents, and now basically anything you say on the phone can be used against you.
Right. Well, dude.
And some people say, "Oh, that's a leap." I'm like, it's really not. It's, because first you're going to get conditioned with the fact that they're allowed to listen to certain phone calls under certain conditions.
Right.
But how do look at how laws and that have done? It's always been, some lawyer who tweaked the language that was written to his advantage, and now it got bent a little bit further and a little further. That's what's going to happen. That there's going to be a point where someone's going to be like, well, they used it for this, and then they used it for that, so really it's just that extra little half step, and now we can convict this person if we do it. But then once those little half steps reaches a full yard, well, now we've gotten so far away from what they did it, and I'm just saying, the problem was you never should have enacted that law to begin with. Why are they able to listen to those phone calls?
Right.
There's no purpose for it. For what they were saying it's for, come on, you were already doing it. That's what we have That's what I would assume. That's what we have our intelligence for.
Right.
What are we spending money, our tax dollars on? CIA, FBI, Homeland Security. Now it's like, if these people can't, secretly listen in and basically show up and take these people out, then you know what? If you're saying you got to do it in a public forum, then whatever. That has some sort of agenda behind it.
I agree.
And, yeah, so I don't know. It's just, to me, it's just, and I think we just sit there and we just keep seeing it, that they just keep tweaking on so many different levels, whether it's, letting jobs go overseas, whether it's changing a law here and there. It's never voted on by the people.
Nope.
They always just change it. And all politicians do now is they're just basically come up with the reason to convince you that it's somehow for your good, that it's somehow for you. We're doing it for you.
Yeah, exactly. And then when it comes down to election time, none of these issues ever come up. When's the last time you heard a Patriot Act debate during you didn't hear it in 2008. I guess that's the only time you could have heard it, but you did not hear Patriot Act being debated during the debates in the electoral process last time, and you won't hear it again this time. Instead, you're going to get the same old tired rhetoric that while on some level it's important to some people, it's not important to the overall, business of the country. You're going to get the same old abortion arguments, you're going to get the same old religion arguments, and you're going to take away from the arguments of stuff like that, of our rights being taken from us.
Yeah. Yeah, and like some people, and what's funny is I'll hear some people they'll make this leap, but then if it helps us be, safer, I'm like, well, are you really safer? Because do you really think you can stop? If they can't stop people from coming across the borders, how are you ever going to be safe?
Where is it written that everything has to be safe? Where is that written?
And I would say maybe that's part of the cost. If the world reaches a certain point, then part of our cost of living in a free society is every now and then a building gets blown up by some radical terrorist.
No.
Okay, so let's investigate where that came from, and then let's go do some damage. Let's not jump to conclusions like we've done in the past, but find out who did it and make that group or that country or whoever, you make them pay for it. But do you really want to start changing your free society and start enacting more laws and make it less free?
Right.
You're basically just accomplishing what they want.
Dude, you've been to other countries. When you've gone to those other countries, are they near as safe just to walk out in the street as it is here?
A lot of times, whether a lot of times it sure seems that way.
Let's see.
It's interesting because I actually just you saying that made me think. There was one guy. He was I was talking to him, and then he basically, because I made a comment that if I didn't have family ties, tying you, which is why I think a lot of people stay in America, they have grandchildren and this and that. I said, you could go to another country where your money would go further, some tropical island. And he's like, you would leave America? And I'm like, yeah. I said, there's a lot of great places in the world. He was in America and thinking that everything outside of America was like a third world country.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was just like, really? You think the whole world is like a third world country outside America? And he's like, it is, isn't it? And I'm like, so you just think like all these other countries? I said, a lot of these countries have more modern cities than we do in America.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually a lot of times more modern. And when you travel outside the country, yeah, there's a lot of great parts in the world, and it's not just limited to America. But yeah, it's like, yeah, are there sections that are extremely dangerous? Yeah, but you know what? There are cities in America that are more dangerous.
Sure, absolutely.
It's all going to be where you decide to live.
Everywhere is not Darfur. That's for sure. I know it's a popular belief here because people watch the news and they see nothing but a bunch of kooks rioting in the streets, throwing Molotov cocktails and whatnot. But it ain't like that when you go outside the country. It's just not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been in many, many different cities outside the country, and I've walked the streets at night, gone out to a restaurant, for instance, the last country I was into was Hong Kong. Well, I walked, a couple miles from where another vertical city, but I was just walking this one path late at night, 3:30 in the morning, and yeah, it's like, could something have happened? Yeah, but you know what? Something could have happened in pretty much any of our cities as well.
Mm-hmm.
But did I feel unsafe? No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm a big guy, but maybe that has something to do with it. But at the same time, it's like it's not the picture that some people want to put in your mind, like like everywhere else is so dangerous and it's third world conditions and you're risking your life. It's like, no, because the rest of do you really think that with 7 billion people on the planet, 300 million of them are in America, and so 6.7 billion people are constantly living in danger?
Yeah, they're living in fear.
Is that what some people think? It's just like, okay. Yeah. That's an amazing thought.
Yeah, no kidding. It's definitely crazy. But I guess the whole point is that those countries don't seem to have the Patriot Act either to keep them safe. Yeah.
And it, just such an unnecessary act. I thought it was, it was a law that was passed on opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
The opportunity opened itself, and now all we got to do is convince people. And how are we going to do it? Well, we're just going to convince them because we're going to tell them how it's for their good, it's for their protection.
Uh-huh.
And so many people just gobble that up.
Yeah, we're going to do it for
amazing.
freedom. For freedom.
And I would say anytime they enact some law that people didn't vote on, it should always always be viewed at with some skepticism because, well, why are they just doing that? And again, it goes back to the point we hit a couple times on the show already, just the power of these people, just that are the politicians in charge to just do things that they probably, and it's all based